Hello and welcome to this week's video where I'm reviewing an SWM 440 Gran Milano. So now I've been out on this bike a couple of hours, I'm really getting to grips with it. It feels really planted, it handles nicely, really like this engine. It's got loads of torque. So recently I've ridden a couple of sort of lower capacity, sort of 250, 300cc bikes, and I thought they were okay, but they didn't blow me away. But I think this sort of engine size, this one's a 440. It's a bit different. It's got a lot more torque, so you don't feel like you're constantly having to rev it. I also think it sounds really good. So even though it's just a 35 something like that horsepower machine, then it doesn't feel so bad because it's got this additional torque from sort of low revs. Also, with it being a sort of single cylinder, then quite often you get a lot of vibrations. Then yes, you can feel some vibrations on this bike. You sort of feel it through the bars of the seat a little bit, but not too much. But at higher speeds, then yeah, the mirrors do have a little bit of shake. But for a single pot engine, it's actually really smooth. So handling wise, it's a great little bike, even on these little roads that are bumpy. Then it soaks up the bumps, it goes around the corners well, just behaves itself nicely. I'm currently up on the roads near Hawes and Ingleton, and it's a good mix. So there's these small sort of B roads, and then there's a really nice road that goes from Ribblehead Viaduct to Hawes. That's a lot faster, and that road really suited this bike. The good thing about it, because it's not massively powerful, is that you could really properly go for it on this bike, and it felt like you were going a lot quicker than you actually were, and had loads of fun without going at stupid speeds. And to me, that's what motorbiking's all about. It's about enjoying yourself and having fun and that feeling of freedom, and this bike definitely gives you that. And like I say, you're not breaking any speed limits, you're not taking a huge risk. It's a good place to pull over, thank you. But then on these smaller roads, because it's a light, nimble bike, then it's good fun on these too. So now it's the middle of October, and it is coming to the end of the sort of proper biking season. As you can see, then the roads are starting to get covered in leaves and they're wet. Not ideal for being on a motorbike, is corners with wet leaves. There are worse roads than this to play on. So obviously from a wind protection point of view, then there's no screen whatsoever, so you're completely exposed, but it's just really clean. I guess because when you're in the right position down here, then there's absolutely nothing in front of you, so there's no sort of bodywork to disturb the airflow anyway. But like I say, it's a completely naked bike, so you'd expect it to be a bit windy. So even at these higher speeds, the vibrations aren't too bad. Yes, there's a bit of wind to be expected, but it actually feels fine. So while we're stuck behind this car, let's do my usual positives and negatives. So the three biggest positives about this bike. First of all, I think its looks. Yes, it's got that cafe racer style, but it's a little bit different to other things. So that may divide opinion. I think it's one of those bikes that you'll think, oh, that looks great, or you'll think that's not a normal cafe racer. But to me, that's a positive. I think it looks really good. Things like the double exhausts, everything, I think proportions are good, the tank looks decent, everything sort of looks right. It's got piggyback shocks, big chunky front forks. I think it works well. The second thing is the sort of sound and torque of this engine. On a few reviews recently, especially this sort of custom style bike, then I seem to say a lot that I really like the sound of the exhaust, and this one's no exception. I think those twin pipes really help, and I also noticed that they seem to have a circlip, so I'm thinking you can probably remove the baffles fairly easily. So as you can hear, sounds alright anyway, so with the baffles removed I think it'd sound epic. Because of the sort of capacity, this sort of 450cc, it feels like a 250 bike but with a lot more grunt, so it's still nice and light, but that extra torque's just great. And the third thing is the sort of quality of everything. It feels really, really well put together. The quality of things is decent, but it feels absolutely solid. Not all bikes, even if they're new, because this is only done 100 odd miles, something like that, and I've done most of those, I think. So you'd expect it to feel decent, but some brand new bikes, especially some of the sort of older Chinese bikes, and even from new, they just didn't feel well put together, where this does. So on to any negatives. So the first one's probably a negative to all cafe races, really, not this particular bike, but it's the fact that obviously you're sort of bent over. It's quite an aggressive seating position. It's more comfortable than I expected, but I can feel it on my wrists. Having been out most of the day now, then I can feel that my wrists are a little bit achy. Like I say, that's not just this bike, that's all bikes of this sort of style. I can feel it in my back slightly as well, but again, that's not down to this particular bike. The only other couple of small niggly negative things, the wing mirrors, again, because of your seating position, then your elbow sort of gets in the way, and the second part of this one is to do with another issue, which is just, yes, there are vibrations, but you'd expect that from a single pot, and those vibrations, the worst bit about them at higher speed is that it gives your mirrors a little bit of shake, but like I say, it's a single pot engine, so it's going to be vibey at higher revs. So in summary, what do I think to this bike? Overall, I think it's a great little bike. It's definitely one for sort of weekend fun. You just can't resist squeezing that throttle, and that sort of wave of torque takes you. It's really nice. It's just really good fun. That's definitely the sort of word I'd use to describe this bike. a bit like the Mash Scrambler I had earlier in the year. Then that was the same. It sounded nice, you wanted to rev it all the time, and it was just really good fun. This feels similar in sort of emotion it brings out in you to that. So who do I think it's aimed at? Anyone that just wants a sort of weekend blaster bike. Whether it's, you could probably use it for commuting, but I don't think it's the perfect bike for that. Like I say, because of your sort of visibility through mirrors, because of your seating position. For me, for a commuter, I want to be sat more upright. So I'm not sure it's really a commuter bike. You couldn't sort of put a top box on and put your laptop in. That wouldn't really sort of be the purpose of this bike anyway. But yeah, if you just want something that is going to be cheap to run, and the fun per pound is just going to be huge with this bike. So on the road, I think it's just over £5,000 or £5,500. So that, for what you're getting for that, I think it's really good value. Also, your sort of fuel consumption, it's not a big engine either, so you should get about 70 to the gallon out of it. And also in the UK, because it's less than, I think the limit's 600, you get lower road tax because it's a 440. So I decided to add a bonus plus point, and that is the brakes. The front brake especially is absolutely stunning on this bike. It works brilliantly. So like I say, I just forgot to mention it earlier, so I thought it was worth mentioning. It is only a single disc with a Brembo caliper, but like I say, it works brilliantly well. So finally, I'd just like to say a huge thank you to the guys at Ride Motorbikes at Steeton near Keighley. So they lent me this bike for the day. It's their demonstrator. So if you're interested in this bike, then do check them out. As well as being a SWM dealer, they're also dealers for other bikes and other manufacturers, so things like Benelli and Mash. And I've ridden a couple of those bikes. They're worth checking out and having a look at. Like I say, they've got demonstrators of quite a few bikes. As well as new bikes, they've also got a really good selection of used bikes. So when I popped in earlier today, they've got the most stock that I've ever seen them have. So they've got everything from sort of sports bikes to tourers to adventure bikes, and even sort of 125s and scooters. So thanks again to them, and do go check them out if you're in the area.